So you've made your basic donut. Now let's talk about decoration and icing. So if you are all about the original donut, you might have gone for one that is just the plain dough with no icing on. This is a great one for you to then be able to build decorations onto the top like this. So that's a little heart that I've done on the top. You could always add extra berries on. If you've gone for the basic glazed donut, so the one that you've seen in the video where I cover all the step-by-steps from the very beginning of how to make this donut, what is a really nice finishing touch to the glazed one, which has just that basic colour change between the two colours, is to actually do a slip stitch traverse right the way around your colour change line. So all you'll need to do for that is to get your crochet hook once you've done all the stuffing and sewing up, although I will say it's actually easier if you do this first and then you add your eyes on afterwards. If you haven't put your eyes on yet, do see the other video because that's covered in there. But what you're going to do is just grab the yarn like that, and then you travel along that round of colour changing. So put your hook into the next stitch along, yarn over and bring it through both stitches, yarn over and through both stitches. And that just puts a lovely, neat edge onto the colour change between the icing and the dough. It makes that icing just sit off a little bit more in a 3D way. Now, if you wanted to get creative with this, and I'll cover this a little bit more when we get onto the drip one, rather than just doing a basic slip stitch as I have done then, you could always go in for working a few different lengths of stitches. So let me just recall what I mean. So say we're going to do that slip stitch edge, you'd go around like this. But what you could do is you could always add a double crochet in, like that, maybe even a half treble. And that will just make that icing stand off the donut a little bit more. So edge your icing in whichever way you feel like you want to. The slip stitch will just give you a lovely neat edge, but you could always go for a few extra length stitches as well, which will just create a bit more of a wobbly line around the edge. But should you wish to go for the full drip icing like this one, I'll show you how I have done that. So with the drip icing, this was what I've done in that previous video where I've only gone a couple of rounds in rather than covering the whole donut in the icing. And what you will do is at random work a couple of drips that come off the edge. So put that hook in like that, secure it in, and this is in the chunky that I'm now working in. So I've swapped right the way up to an 8mm hook and our chunky yarn to do this one. So I'm going to do a few stitches in just a slip stitch first. So what I was doing before on that last one, like that. And then what I'm going to do is first do a small drip. So to do a small drip, we're going to chain 3 like that, and then we're going to work back down those stitches on the chain. So do you see how we've got the V's on the chain like that? I'm going to do a half treble first. So to do a half treble, I put my yarn around my hook like that, I put my yarn in through the stitch, yarn over, and I'll have 3 loops on my hook like that. Then you yarn over and you come through all 3 in one motion. So come through all 3 stitches. And then I'm going to slip stitch back down that chain. So I'll put my hook into the next stitch along there and slip, and then into the next one along and slip. Then I'm going to do another slip in between. So I've done a small drip like that, one in between, and now let's do a long one so it looks like this icing is running off the edge like that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 this time, and then a half treble into the end like that, and then back down. So do in a few more slips back down that chain, and then continue round that colour change line on the edge of your donut. And all I've done at the end, so you can either leave them so they're dripping off the edge of the donut, or I have actually used my end just to tack those ends on should you wish, so that they'll sit nice and flat round the edge of the donut. So that's doing some drip icing. Again, you could always do a combination of double crochets and half trebles if you wanted to, so you get a wiggly line in between your big drips. Right, on to the next one then. So to do piped icing, so this really is working decoration onto the top. Examples would be ones like this, or even this one where I've done a lattice. Now with ones where you're spiraling round, or you're doing a shape like a flower, All you're going to do is exactly what we just did there, but you'll be doing it in a contrasting colour in a different place. So to do the spiral, I just slip stitch traversed all the way around in the direction. Same with the lines of the flowers, as you do the same thing. Now, if you don't enjoy that slip stitch traverse technique, you could always just make chains. So just get your contrasting yarn and just crochet some chain lengths like this. Snip off your yarn and sew those into position exactly where you want them to be on your donut. And it's up to really whatever you find easiest, whether you like to just slip stitch traverse them straight on so you don't have to do any sewing up, or whether you want to make separate chains and sew them on afterwards. This would be a great technique should you wish to write someone's initials onto one. I'm hoping that a lot of you will enjoy making these for people's birthdays in the future as well. I know that I've certainly got to go away and make one for a certain young girl's request, so I'll be putting a big A onto one of these later on. So you could always do chains and then sew them into position. That might make it a bit easier to get lovely curves if you want to make particular letters. Then on to the sprinkles. So when it comes to doing sprinkles, this one's a nice easy one. You've got two options really. So here I've done sprinkles in two colours, embroidering those ones on afterwards. That would be what it looks like if they are just single colour. And the key to making these look good is to work them all in different directions. So with this one, I've done a mixture of length of stitches. You can see I've got some short ones and some long ones. All you do to add the sprinkles on, so let's add a few sprinkles onto this one, would be to bring your yarn through up into your donut that you're putting them on. Then put your needle in like that, wrap around the end, and then bring it through. But if to make it look as good as you, like a real donut, you want them to be in opposite directions. I wouldn't be tempted to put them all in the same direction unless you want it to look like one that's been very precisely decorated. If you want it to look like someone randomly dropped sprinkles on, make sure you work these in all different directions. So I've done two like that. I now might put one that goes straight through the middle, going that way, like they've fallen down at random. So you can work the sprinkles on like that. Now they're rather large ones. If you want more of a hundreds and thousands effect, so like you've dropped lots of little dots around, just go around one of the stitches. So you could just go around one of the stitches. If you want to get really fancy, you could of course colour change that in when you're working your icing. I hope to see you all getting creative with this lovely basic pattern, subject to, I guess, your techniques and what you want to do with it. So the last few things to show you really is how to work like kind of 3D candy on that. I certainly see that as popping candy when I look at it. So to do the popping candy, all you're going to need to do is put your hook in through the stitch like that, slip stitch into place, and then we're going to just half treble around that stitch twice. So go round your hook first, in, yarn over and through, and then back in, yarn over and through. So you've done two little half trebles like that. Then you just snip that off and you sew those ends in, and that'll pull it down to one of those nice little bobbles. If you want a larger one, more like a berry, and this is a true make bobble when you do a bigger one like that. So what you would do there is put your hook in the same way. This time we're going to chain 2 first and then yarn around the hook, in around that stitch again, yarn over and take the first 2 off, but you're going to leave 2 in place. So then you go round again and then you take the next 2 off, in again, in again, taking 2 off every time, and then the last time, when that berry's as big as you want it to be, you just come through all of those stitches in one motion, and that'll give you a much bigger berry decoration to go on there. Right, so I think that covers all of the techniques. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic time playing with the donuts, and I can't wait to see your creations using this basic pattern. As I said at the beginning, some of these techniques might be better to add on before you put your eyes on, but do refer back to that other video if you want to know exactly how I've done the eyes and the mouth. Again, if you are a total beginner and you want to make this, the full pattern is in the other basic how to make a donut video.